Hi guys, it's Lara and Hercules. Oh, that's a big yawn. So today we're going to be talking about this little guy. I asked you guys on Instagram whether you had any questions about him, about his aging, and whatever you would want to know. Hercules turned 15 not so long ago, so he's actually a little old guy, but fortunately he's in a good shape. And today I'll be talking in general about how I take care of him, how it is to have an aging dog. I'm also going to be talking about some health issues he had in the past and about some minor health issues we're dealing with right now, about his diet, and whatever you guys wanted to know. So if that's something you're interested in, then please keep watching. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, so you probably want to grab yourself something to drink. I have here the rest of my morning smoothie, and at some point I'm gonna make a break and get myself probably a tea, because today it's actually quite cool in the morning, and that's wonderful. And also, since I strongly suspect that this is gonna be rather a long video, I'm gonna kind of divide it into sections, and I will write the timestamps for each section down below in the description box for any of you who are interested just in one particular thing. Now let's start with Hercules' health history. I had Hercules since he was a puppy, and I fully admit back then I didn't know that it was wrong to support a breeder, so I did get him from a breeder, but of course nowadays I would only adopt. There are so many animals in shelters that need home, and that is definitely the right thing to do. Anyway, when I got Hercules, he was a very healthy puppy. He got all his shots, he was in a great shape, and up to his age 2, he never had any issues. I think it was shortly before he turned 2 or shortly after that he had some inflammation in the glands that are next to his butthole. This is starting really lovely. Anyway, and the vet looked at that and he said it would be the best to remove them. So he had a little surgery back then, and while he was having this surgery, they also had him fixed. And that was it for quite a long time. We never had any problems. At some point, he started limping. He started walking basically on 3 legs, and he would always lift I think it was the right back leg first. And I found it very weird, so I went to the vet and had them look at his leg, because it just didn't seem right to me that he wouldn't use that foot so much. And they found out that he had some knee issues. So basically, I'm just gonna explain it very simply because I'm not a vet and I'm not a doctor. So there is this little kneecap, and in your, like on your bones where the kneecap sits, there's a little dent where the knee fits in, and this dent was too flat. And what would always happen was that the kneecap kind of shifted and sometimes twisted, and that caused him discomfort, and that's why he sometimes wouldn't step on the foot, and he would kind of shake it, and then the kneecap would jump back, and then he was okay again. So obviously that needed to be fixed. So he had quite a big surgery for that. We went to a specialist here in Vienna. They were super sweet. They took really great care of him. When he got his anesthesia, I was there so I could stroke him and tell him I loved him. And they called me shortly before he started waking up, so that when he would wake up, I would be there, so that he would be as little stressed as possible, because the surgery itself is already very stressful. So they had it fixed. What they did was they made the dent for the kneecap a little bit deeper, and they put some kind of a stopper to the side so that the kneecap would not be able to shift anymore. And from that time on, his leg was amazing. Unfortunately, a few years later, he had the same problem with the back leg. Only there, it even hurt him, because with the first leg, it was just uncomfortable for him. But with this leg, when that started, whenever I wanted to pick him up, he was squeaking, and you could tell that that was way worse. But we had it fixed, and since then he's able to run wonderfully and walk again for quite a long time, so that is at least a relief. Another health issue he's been having quite often were eye issues, eye infections and inflammations very often. So I would always notice that he would be kind of like winking, like this, and it wouldn't go away, because sometimes it was caused by a hair in his eye. But if it would last the entire day, then I would always go to the vet, and they would always give us some ointment for that, and it usually went away after a few days. However, after all these years dealing with that issue, little veins started growing in his eyes. And I noticed about 3 months ago that he suddenly had little red spots in his eyes, which scared me a lot. So I ran with him to the vet immediately, and they looked at his eyes and sent us to an eye specialist. There is a really wonderful doctor at the veterinary university in Vienna. And so they examined his eyes. They gave us 2 special ointments. So he's been getting them 4 times a day for several weeks. Then we had a checkup. His eyes got a little better, but one of the eyes was still not in such an amazing shape. So right now we are taking eye drops for the eye that is a little bit worse, in addition to the ointment, and he's getting the ointment on the other eye that was a little bit better. And in 2 weeks we are going to have another checkup. It doesn't apparently hurt him, because when I'm applying the ointment and the drops, he's fine. But the problem is that he could go blind. And since he's hearing really poorly, it looks to me that he's actually pretty much deaf, because at some point he started reacting to sounds, to his name, to everything. And that is weird, because we went to dog school, so he's trained. And fortunately, we trained not only with the vocals, but we trained also with signs. So he's only reacting to the signs that I'm showing him and not to the words that I'm saying. So if he would go blind, that would be a problem, because we would have a really big communication issue. So I really hope that we can solve this. The next issue that we are dealing with are his teeth. So he had twice several teeth pulled out. I do brush his teeth on a regular basis, but he's very impatient with that, and he would never let me brush them for a really long time. So I don't think that I'm brushing them long enough to prevent any of these issues. Plus, I'm not even sure if these issues could have been prevented whatsoever. And while he had his last little tooth surgery where they had to pull out a few of his teeth, they also found out that he had a little heart murmur. So they sent us to a cardiologist. And when the cardiologist looked at Hercules' heart, he said he has a really strong, good heart, but one of his flaps doesn't close fully. And one of the symptoms of that is that he would suddenly start grasping for air and coughing. And I always thought it was one of the things that happens to us humans when you drink or eat and something comes, to your throat and you start coughing. But then the cardiologist explained to me that's actually connected to this heart flap, because when it doesn't close fully, he grasps for air. And the reason why the flap doesn't close fully is there's a little something, like a little tip at the end of the flap, and that prevents the flap from closing completely. So he gave us a certain medicine that he has been taking ever since on daily basis, and that kept it under control. We are having yearly checkups, and the checkup that we had this year went really well, because the doctor said that his heart is amazing, that even though he is 15, his heart is just as strong as a heart of a 3-year-old dog, which made me really, really happy. And last but not least, as he started getting older, I wanted to have his blood work done twice a year, because I really want to keep an eye on things just in case something would come up, so that we could be more proactive than waiting for something to happen and then react and finding out that it could have been probably easily prevented if we would have checked on it earlier. So at one of our checkups, we found out that the early kidney indicator, whatever that's called, showed that it was a little bit higher, which means his kidney is still fine. The regular kidney indicator was okay, but when this goes up, it indicates that something's going on with his kidney and with his metabolism. So they recommended that I would give him a special kidney diet. So I consulted also another vet, because I wanted to have an opinion about what food am I supposed to give him. And the recommendation was to give him a food that had quite a lot of greens in it. So he had, for almost half a year, he's been having food where there was about 70% plant-based and 30% animal-based. And then when we had the next checkup, the kidney indicator went up again by 1 point, which gave me a scare. So I said, okay, I'm going to give him the kidney diet, the special kidney diet, and that's it. So Hercules had the special kidney diet, which is basically just meat, for half a year. And lo and behold, the kidney indicator shoot to the stars and went up by, I think it was like 9 points. And I was like, not happening. I'm not gonna give him just that ever again. So I started mixing the kidney diet with greens. So right now the ratio is about 50-50. And guess what? We had the next checkup and the kidney indicator improved very much. So apparently that is the right diet. So he's having animal-based kidney diet where the protein is a little bit reduced and there are certain vitamins and minerals, and that all targets his kidneys. And then he's also having greens, and I'm mixing them up, so I'm buying a certain food, and that appears to be working. Dogs are omnivores, so for them having greens and some plant-based stuff is definitely a good thing to do. You could obviously also give your dog a vegan diet as long as it's balanced and as long as there is enough minerals and vitamins that the dog needs. And in that case, I would again suggest to have their blood work checked regularly to make sure that there are no deficiencies. I tried giving Hercules vegan food a while ago. The thing was, he would eat it for a few days and then he would get sick of it. He did not want to touch it anymore. And for me, it makes no sense to throw food away. And he's a little bit picky when it comes to food. That never was a problem when he was younger, but as he started getting older, he started being very picky. And I just don't see the point in wasting resources. So the way I'm feeding him now, where he has like 50% plant-based and 50% his kidney diet, that's something he apparently likes and that works very well. And my main concern is that my dog eats enough and that he has balanced diet and that he's healthy. Now let's talk about how I'm taking care of Hercules on a daily basis. So in the morning, the first thing is always he goes in the yard and he does his business and he checks his territory. And during that time, I always prepare his food. So it's, as I said, 50% plant-based and 50% is the special kidney diet. Then he gets his heart medicine and his eye drops into his left eye, and then he gets the ointment into both of his eyes, and that's it. And we're doing the same thing in the evening, only he does not need the heart medicine in the evening. That's something he takes only once a day. I brush his fur regularly, especially during the times where his coat is kind of switching, you know, when it gets warmer and when it starts getting colder. And I clean his ears on regular basis, and I also regularly check his paws and completely his fur if he has any ticks or something, you know, suck into his paws, just to make sure that he's comfortable. For the ticks, we are buying drops in the vet store that you'd simply drop somewhere behind his neck, and that works for about 4 weeks. And then you have to do it again, and you do it only during the season when ticks are outside. And he's going regularly to a doggy spa. We go there about 4 times a year, and this is where he gets his claws clipped. Hercules is mostly walking on grass. We do go to work on concrete, but that's not enough for him to have his claws filed naturally, so he definitely needs someone to take care of his claws, otherwise they would be too long. So yeah, they clip his claws, they brush his fur, they wash him usually, and then they give him a trim because he has a long coat and it would grow a little bit longer. The coat on his body, on his main body, would not grow that much, but there are areas like the back of his feet, like, no, not feet, the legs like this, basically, that gets very long, and also his tail gets very long, and the hair around his butt gets super long. It looks like a grass skirt, and that's what we have trimmed regularly. And they also always trim the hair around his ears a little bit so that it looks cute. And we go regularly to the vet. As I said, twice a year we are having the blood work done, and then we go whenever necessary. Which leads us to talking about money. I feel like that's a topic not so many people talk about when they are introducing their pets, but I think it's very important. Animals can be pretty expensive, and even if they don't have any special needs, there is a certain amount of money that needs to be spent on a regular basis to make sure that they have everything they need, that they would have their regular checkups and so on. So the surgeries that he had for his knees were around 1,200 euros each, which is quite a lot of money. Whenever he had his teeth pulled, that was always a couple of hundred of euros. When I'm having his blood work done, that's usually something between 140 euros and 180 euros. When I go to the cardiologist, it's something around 140 euros. The ointment that he's getting on daily basis is 43 euros. The heart medicine that I'm buying for him is something around 40 euros, but that at least lasts for quite a while. And in general, whenever I go to the vet, when he has some little things, then it's usually at least 40 or 60 euros, and sometimes even more when he needs some medicine. So if I were a person who would be living on already a really tight budget, I would never get a dog, because again, it's a huge responsibility, and I would never want to be in a situation where I would not be able to help my animal when they would need it the most. And also, let's talk about time. So I'm making sure that Hercules is almost never alone. So of course he's alone when I go to the grocery store, because I can't bring him with me, or when I go to the doctor, but I'm bringing him with me to work. And when I'm not here, when I go, for example, on vacation with my dad for a few days, then he's always with Jack, and we are making sure that he is alone as little as possible. And I don't think it's fair getting a dog already knowing that the dog's gonna be like 10 or 12 hours alone, because that's just not fair. That's just wrong. I remember Katrin Berndt talked in one of her videos about the law in Sweden that dogs are not supposed to be left alone longer than 4 hours, and someone was mocking her in the comments and basically bitching about how stupid that is, because dogs can be trained to stay alone longer. Of course they can be trained, and of course they could stay longer, but it's fair to them? No, it's actually absolutely horrible. Dogs are social creatures, and I just don't see the point of getting a dog when I would already know that I can't be there for my dog. So no. There was one time when I was not able to bring my dog to work with me, and that was when I was working as a flight attendant, and during that time he would be with Jack. But other than that, I always had Hercules with me at work. Now, shortly about his aging, I talked about it quite a lot in his birthday vlog, so I will link the video down below, and I'm not gonna go into the things that I mentioned there, which was talking about him getting slower and that the heat affects him a little bit more than it did when he was younger. But in general, he's actually in a really good shape. When he gets up, he has quite a lot of energy, and he's always happy to go on a walk. Only he does not want to walk as long as we used to do. So back when he was younger and fit, he would be able to walk for hours in the woods, and that's too much for him. So we usually ride with my bike to the park, and we go into the woods for at least half an hour, 45 minutes, and that's fine. And on daily basis, he's simply enjoying his yard, and that's nice for him because he doesn't have to be on a leash, he doesn't have to have any harness or a band, and he can just move as he pleases and run around as he pleases. And in addition to that, we walk to work, even though I could go with the tram, and on our way home we actually usually take the longer way home so that he gets enough exercise. And that's a thing that is very important, especially for aging animals. It is really important that they still move enough. They need to get their exercise, because it's like with us humans. Getting regular exercise for him is very important so that he still has nice strong muscles, and in general that's really good for him. He loves it because I spend time with him and it's just nice outside. One thing I did notice with him aging is that he's attached to me more than he already used to be. So we always had a very strong bond, and that's why I always say I'm his mama. But now, since his hearing got so bad, and since he got older, he gets really nervous when I'm not around. So let's say I would be at the office with him, and I have a fluffy pillow below my desk and he sleeps on it, and when I would go to the server room and to copy some stuff, and then I would stop at Jack's office and talk with him for a bit, and he would wake up in the meantime, he would get really nervous and he would go through the office and he would look for me, And once he would know where I am, then he feels okay, and then he goes back to his spot. But I think that's all that I should mention about his overall health and about how the aging is. And now I'm just gonna grab my phone and we are going to go through the question that you guys asked on Instagram and also here where the community button is. So your local wood elf asked on Instagram a very interesting question. I do not mean this to be insensitive, as I myself have gone through it with my rabbit of 10 years, but what will you be doing for your dog when he passes away? A burial at a cemetery, backyard, cremation, planting a tree, keeping a necklace of his ashes? I'm curious to know how you would heal best from it. Keep strong, Hercules. 15 years is amazing. So thank you so much for this question. I think that's a thing we should all ask ourselves while our animals are alive, because that's the time during which we can still think kind of clearly and as objectively as possible, because I'm pretty sure when the day will come I will be grieving so much and I would not be able to make any decision regarding to that whatsoever. So I thought about burying Hercules in our yard, and there is a certain spot that he enjoys a lot. So when it gets sunny, usually in spring, when it gets finally warmer, there is this spot where he likes to lay down and he closes his eyes and he just soaks up the sun. And I thought about burying him there and planting a tree. But then again, should anything happen in our yard and we would have to dig it out, it would break my heart and I could not bear to find his remains. So at this point, I didn't make a final decision, but I think I will have him cremated and I will probably spread the ashes in our yard so that he would be kind of still with us. But I might change my mind. And again, this is something I will research a little bit more. And then I will at some point make my final decision and I will write it down somewhere, so when the day would come that we would know what to do and what I would feel comfortable with, because I already know it's not gonna be easy, but I'm trying to mentally prepare myself that of course it could happen any day. For me, the comforting thought is that I gave Hercules the best life possible. I always made sure that I love him so much. I'm even telling him a bedtime story. Okay, you have to hear this. So every evening when we are done with watching our show or film, he always goes for the last time to the yard to pee. And he's usually cuddled next to me on the sofa and he's super sleepy and floppy. So, and I always pick him up and I tell him, you know what? When mommy was a little girl, she had so many plush animals and she had them in her bed, and when she would go to bed, she wished so much that at least one of them would come to life overnight, and every single morning she would wake up and she would be very sad because they didn't. But little did she know, it was because she was destined to be your mommy. And then one day your mommy has seen this little fluffy white doggy with button eyes sitting in a grass patch, and she was immediately imprinted, and from that time on she knew she's gonna love you more than anything in the world. And then I always tell him I love him more than anything in the world and smooch him, and that's the bedtime story my dog gets to hear every single freaking night. Katochi1 asked on Instagram what we are doing against ticks. She said that her doggy, who is by the way very similar to Hercules, they have even similar color of their fur. She said that her doggy is having some issues and is having troubles with some of the stuff against ticks. So we never had any troubles there. I'm basically buying just drops against ticks that I drop behind Hercules's neck, and they work for several weeks, and I repeat it only during the season. I think I already mentioned that, so that will be that question. And the last question came from Marissa. She asked about Hercules' diet, and I already explained that, so that question is basically answered. So he's getting a mix of plant-based food and kidney diet, and that seems to be working really well because his early kidney indicator improved and he also likes it. And that is it. I hope that I didn't forget any questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to write them down below in the comments, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible and answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and see you soon. Bye.